Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar on drone pilot certification training. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'll be turning things over to Micah Flanagan in just a moment. But first, a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you have not joined us for a webinar before, or even if you have, just a reminder that we have a questions box in the GoToWebinar panel, and we ask that you please submit all questions for the presenters in that box, and I will be reading those off to them when we get to the end of their presentations. We have some handouts for you, which unfortunately my technology is not cooperating right now to load those into the handout box, but we will email those out to you after the webinar has concluded. So that's all I have. Micah, are you ready?
Good afternoon, everybody. I was looking through our list of attendees. We have a lot of people. I recognize some names, so welcome to our webinar today. My name is Micah Flanagan, and I am the Supportive Services Manager at ODOT in the Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And I work a lot with our on-the-job training program. And one aspect of that program is we get funding from the Federal Highway Administration. And the funding helps to create opportunities for people like you and to help promote on-the-job training and advancement for people like you and new skills. So it's very exciting. Last year we put into our statement of work for some drone certification training so that everyone could learn how to get trained to pass that certification test to operate drones. So we thought we would bring you this webinar to provide you with some more information about drones. So just wanted to go over our agenda today. So first we're going to have a bit of information about what UAS training is. And then we're going to receive an overview from BWC about the variety of uses of drone technology. And then we are going to hear a little bit of an overview from our UAS Center about how ODOT is utilizing drones. We're going to hear from Great Lakes Company, how has Great Lakes used drones in construction? And then after that, we are going to hear back from Victoria on how to access the courses that ODOT offers for drone certification training, and also a Q&A. So welcome to the training, and we hope that you enjoy your course today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Micah. So I've given Josh the presenter status. It's all yours, Josh.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the screen share on to the right screen here. Sorry.
You're fine. We saw your slide there for a moment, and then it went back down. Yep, looks good.
There we go. All right. All right. So good morning, or actually it's not morning, good afternoon. Happy to be here to talk with you all about drones today. So I'm just going to go over some commercial uses for drones, a little bit about the Part 107 certification through the FAA, and then at the end we'll talk a little bit about how BWC can help you with drones with our program and kind of what we do. So we'll jump into it here and look at some commercial uses for drones. One of the first ones we'll look at is inspections, and actually we'll look at quite a few different types of inspections. This one here is more of an insurance type situation where you're doing a roof inspection. Drones, great use for this, and as you kind of hopefully you're seeing on the video, the drone's basically just going to fly over this roof, take a whole bunch of pictures of it. They're going to take all those pictures, put it in the computer. They're going to stitch all those pictures back together, and from that they'll be able to determine, the area of the roof pitches, look for anomalies in the roof that might need repaired. So, from a safety perspective, obviously this is a great tool because you can keep your claims adjuster on the ground. And you're gathering a ton of data about that roof in a short amount of time. This is, probably a 10-minute or so flight to where you could collect all this information and safely. The next ones we're going to talk about just a few different, again, in the realm of inspections. The one on the left is bridge inspections, and I'm sure ODOT's probably going to talk a little bit about that as well. But here's kind of the traditional way with the a truck and guys in the buckets doing their inspection. Obviously, there's some inherent hazards to something like this, where obviously you have to close down a lane of traffic. That's always going to be a hazard. Having guys in a bucket hanging underneath a bridge. So there's just some things that with a drone, you're going to have your operator, safely, not on the road, somewhere offset from that, and they can fly the drone, not have to close lane of traffic. So they're mitigating a lot of different hazards by utilizing some drone technology. In the middle, we have a cell phone tower. So cell phone towers, they do inspections where they need to identify what equipment's on it, identify the condition of the equipment. So obviously, rather than have somebody climb all the way to the top of a tower like that, utilizing a drone to get up there and get some high definition imagery of what's going on up there can certainly make it quicker and, again, safer. And then our picture on the right is just a school complex. And obviously they have to do their maintenance and facilities people have to do inspections of that complex. So similar to the roof inspection, again, a drone, rather than have people climbing around on different buildings and trying to do that, a drone's a great tool. Again, safety is the big thing there. So just to give you some ideas of some of the technology that's out there, this is a 30 times zoom camera, and the video I have here is just, it started all the way zoomed in, and I'll just kind of give you an idea of how far that particular camera can zoom in. This is a readily available camera, and it's pretty impressive that you can literally zoom that far into with that camera. So if you think in terms of doing an inspection of maybe electric lines, where you maybe don't want to have a drone within the electric field of big powerful electric lines, so you could safely fly a drone outside of that and use a zoom camera to you could probably do thread counts of a bolt with the with the power of the zoom there. So so that's kind of some of the technology that's out there to aid in that kind of inspection work. Confined space. So this is a pretty specialized drone. Obviously, you can see it has a cage. You can put it into obviously places maybe you don't want to send a worker, whether it's they're going to get exposed to chemicals or gases, or maybe it's just in an area that's difficult to get to safely. So we have a drone like this where obviously it has a light, has a thermal camera on it, has some features to help it not get hung up on things. So a lot of different things, very specialized, but again, it's doing that same kind of difficult inspection work, maybe unsafe inspection work, and being able to do that with the actual human outside of that area. So another great use. So construction, I'll just pause this for a second. So construction, and I'm sure you're going to hear some more about how construction's using it here later. This use is just progress of a construction site. So you're just going to see a drone that basically has flown the exact same loop throughout the course of of this project. And now we're just going to kind of see how that's changed. So this is a great tool for a site supervisor to see, obviously the progress of the project, but also seeing what materials are on hand, what equipment's on site, those kinds of things, if you can kind of get that imagery on a weekly basis. So this is just kind of a neat video to see how they do that. And then volume calculation. So another great tool. This example's a stone quarry. So they need to calculate, how much materials in some of these piles of rock and stone. So rather than have an employee coming in and being in the area where heavy equipment's being driven through, or having to climb up on, loose piles of stone. You can have your drone pilot offset from this facility. They fly the drone over the entire facility and take, similar to the roof example from earlier, they're going to take a whole bunch of pictures of this entire facility and use a computer then to stitch all that together, create a 3D model of everything out there. And then now you'll be able to see here, they're just basically clicking right along the tow line of that pile of material, and literally just clicking calculate, and it's going to give you your volume, and very accurate. So another great way. Public safety, big users of drones. The police here, I'll show you a couple based on infrared cameras. This one is a guy obviously hiding behind a car in the middle of the night. They have a drone with that thermal camera up there. They can obviously identify where he was at pretty quickly. The next one here is going to be a Alzheimer's patient, wandered off middle of a field, pitch black at night, put the drone up. We're able to identify where he was at. And obviously that would be much more difficult just to go out in the middle of a field and try to find somebody that is unconscious in the middle of a field. So that's a couple of the uses that public safety uses drones for a lot of different things, but those are a couple interesting uses. And then our final commercial use is precision agriculture. So these are some pretty beefy drones used for spraying, spraying herbicides and pesticides on crops. But it's a very unique use. So that down prop wash that's kind of pushing the chemicals down in a nice even fashion. So it's a really kind of a great way to use that for spraying. Usually used more so for smaller crops, but it's getting kind of bigger and bigger. The other thing they can do with regard to precision agriculture is, they can actually do stand counts as they're taking imagery of their fields, and they can identify how many plants they actually have there. And then kind of along with how many plants that they have, how healthy are they? So they can see what maybe needs sprayed, maybe doesn't, or something that needs attended to, and not have to just kind of blanket spray the whole crop. So those are some different ways they're doing it in agriculture. So if we look at the FAA certification part, so Part 107 is the rule that came out back in 2016. That is what enabled us to use drones commercially in the US. So the big hurdle here is you have to pass an aeronautical knowledge test. So this is, and I'll talk in the next slide kind of what's on that. But you have to pass that test, and then afterwards you have to pass a recurrent knowledge test every 24 months. So every 2 years you got to take that test. It's a slightly condensed test from the original one, but you do have to continue to do that. It's $150. It's $150 every time you take it. You schedule that through a company that facilitates the testing called PSI, and you can take that exam at FAA test centers. So a lot of those would be airports. So you should be able to find a place somewhat local to you. So what's on that test? So we're looking at a few different things. So it's 60 questions, the test itself. And within those 60 questions, on the right here, you can kind of see the percentage of what's on there. But UAS regulations is one of the categories. So that would be, just general UAS regulations, operating rules, how to get your certification and maintain it, how to get waivers, those kinds of things. The second one's airspace and operating requirements. So super important to understand understanding airspace, where you can fly without any authorization, where you need to get further authorization before you can fly there. So those are very important things. Third one is weather. So we're kind of looking at sources of weather and how weather can affect your aircraft's performance. So those kinds of things. Loading and performance is, if you put a different kind of payload on your drone or a different camera or something, how that might affect flight characteristics. And then the final one's UAS operations. So, and that would be, radio communication procedures, how airports work, emergency procedures, air decision making, maintenance and inspections, those kinds of things. So you do have to get a 70% to pass that test. Last time I looked, the pass rates is fairly high. It's around 90, 92%. But if you don't have a background in aviation, it's certainly a test that studying is required for. It is actually a fairly challenging test, especially when you don't have that background. So some of the things that we have done with preparing our pilots to take the test, we utilize mobile apps. The one we use kind of simulates the test, so it's kind of mock tests that we take. It has a lot of different questions similar to what you might see on the test, so that's helpful to kind of get you in the idea of what to expect. We've had people do online on demand, which I think is great because you can do it at your own pace. You don't have to dedicate a couple days. You can do it when you get time to it, and you go through sections. If you don't understand the section, you can go back to it. And then, when you have to, 2 years later, when you have to do the recurrent testing, you can go back and kind of freshen up your knowledge on some of those pieces. In person, a lot of people prefer in person. They like that, instant communication with the instructor. It's always going to be definitely more expensive, and it's a lot of information to get in, say, a 2-day training. We've actually had people go to 1-day trainings for Part 107, and it's just way too much information for 1 day. So we typically don't recommend less than 2 days if you're doing an in-person training to prep you for Part 107. So we've had people have good luck with that, though. And then finally now, and obviously why we're here today to talk, is ODOT Online's new training to prep you for Part 107. And we actually have 2 pilots that are going through that right now, that are trying to, well, soon to be pilots. They are working towards getting that certification. So, and that's going really well. So before I kind of move on, let me just talk a little bit about BWC's drone program and how we might be able to assist you. We actually use drones operationally. We use drones in accident scenes. Typically with the drones, it's going to be fatalities at an accident scene, and we build 3D models of these accident scenes so that our investigators can review that whole scene. They can take measurements. They can do all sorts of different things. Some of the similar things that you saw in my examples earlier. So that's kind of what we do operationally, but the other part of our program is helping businesses that are interested in using drones, because obviously, as you saw me talk about or heard me talk about, the different commercial uses, the big theme here is the safety part of it. It's a great safety tool. So if that's something you're interested in, I will meet with you one-on-one. For sure, that probably looks like a Zoom meeting actually right now. Hopefully we'll get back to face-to-face meetings eventually. But we'll do that. There's no cost to it. We're just trying to share our expertise in the technology. So we can talk about policies and procedures, vendors, demo equipment, software, go over the FAA regulations. There's a lot to know there. And then, just best practices for field ops, how we operate when we're out in the field, those types of things. And then kind of to piggyback off of that, we are putting together a short-term training, like a 1 or 2 day training specifically. I don't have a date for this. Obviously, this is kind of backburnered until we get past the pandemic. But within that, we're looking to help you again with best practices. Fly through our NIST design proficiency course, which hopefully you're seeing the video there in the bottom right, where we use just a bunch of buckets to try to help guide you in trying to see how proficient you are in putting a drone in a specific place in space. So, which can be more challenging than that might sound. And then in general, gaining better understanding of FAA regulations and just becoming a more skilled pilot, more confident pilot. So that's a training that we're looking to put together. If that's something you're interested in, even though we don't have any dates in the future right now for it, please shoot me an email. Here's my contact info. Any of these methods, get a hold of me, let me know you're interested, and I'll put you on the list. Or if you have just any questions at all about drones, always happy to answer whatever I can. If I can't answer it, I got some contacts. I'll find somebody that knows, I'm sure. So again, feel free to get in contact with me. That concludes what I have, so I will hand it back over.
Thanks, Josh. And there was one question that came in while you were speaking. I don't know if you want to take it now or if you want to hold it for later.
How about we hold it for later for right now? I'll take a look at it.
Thanks. All right, I'm switching presenter status over to David now.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you guys can see my screen here. Can we get everything look good?
Great. Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Gallagher. I'm with the Ohio UAS Center. We're a division of Drive Ohio under ODOT, and there's about 6 of us that work in our office, so we all have a little bit of a different background. I'm a remote pilot, and I got my private pilot license as well. We've got 3 GIS folks in our office, and we've got an air traffic controller, actually 2 air traffic controller folks retired in our office. And we have one guy who's one of our remote pilots. He is a regional pilot, and he's an aircraft mechanic. So we've got a good blend of folks at our office. And basically, we were formed in 2013 under the Kasich administration. And our primary function is to support and conduct operations with Ohio Department of Transportation, develop UAS policies and procedures, review proposed UAS operations for ODOT contractors. So if there's contractors out there looking to use UAS as a tool, we offer that in our right-of-ways, and I'll also explain a little more of that as we go along. We're also a shared resource for other state agencies. So we've worked with just about every state agency or county engineer's office or county sheriff's office, just to name a few. Ohio Department of Public Safety, Ohio EPA, Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, Ohio Department of Natural Resources. We also work with a lot of local municipalities as well. So you might know it, might not realize it now, but we're in the midst of an aerial revolution. We're generally thought of the 3rd revolution, the first being the propeller engine, the second being jet engines, now the 3rd, the electrification of vehicles, and that kind of coincides with automation and autonomy. So we're kind of at a unique place in history when it comes to aviation. At the UAS Center, we focus on data collection, logistics, human transport, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But for the purpose of this, we'll mainly focus on data collection is what my expertise is here at the Ohio Department of Transportation's UAS Center. So why do we even use drones at the Ohio Department of Transportation? The easy answer here is it increases efficiency, it increases safety. You see an individual climbing up. This is the Veteran City Skyway Bridge in Toledo. So it's a very difficult bridge to inspect. So just to give you an example, a couple years ago, a bolt sheared off the top of it and hit a glass panel on the way down. So we just set up a drone real quick to see the severity of the incident. It was quick, easy to pay. We didn't have to hire someone to go climb it. So just to give you a quick example of efficiency and safety right there. So we've had a pretty good couple of years. Good couple of years at the UAS Center. In 2019, we logged 344 projects, 1,471 flights. Last year, we logged 552 projects and logged 2,009 individual flights. So We started using this platform called Skyward to track and schedule all of our flight. It does all of our risk mitigation and our safety management system applications in one online site. So since we started using that at the end of 2018, we've logged 3,912 flights and 1,028 projects at ODOT. So we've had a pretty good run so far. Just to kind of give you a timeline, Josh, who we've worked with over the years, he kind of illustrated this pretty well, but it was pretty difficult to fly at one point, and we were kind of struggling along, flying under public certificates of authorization. It wasn't until 2016 when the FAA came out with remote pilot certificate is when things really changed for not only for us in the Department of Transportation, but nationally. Folks were allowed to use this for commercial application. It was easier for us to train pilots and find pilots. You didn't have to be a private pilot in order to fly these like you did at one point. So it really was a game changer for regulatory purposes back in 2016. So we started buying more aircraft, hiring more people. We really took off with using this as a tool to increase our transportation infrastructure, maintain it more efficiently. So we've got a variety of aircraft. You may be familiar with some of these. We've got a couple of fixed wing aircraft that we use, the EB, and hopefully we'll have more opportunity to use those as the restrictions lighten up to fly those over moving traffic. We have 4 M210s. Those are our primary looking at traffic vehicle. They have thermal capabilities. We use it for public safety. We look at a lot of landslides and flooding type of events, a lot of national emergency type of operations we use. We have Skydio 2s. We use those for communication and bridge inspectors. We have now 8 of those. We have a couple Inspire 2s. We have one M600, which are heavy lift aircraft. We've got one Helios inside the ball there, and we have 8 Phantom 4 RTK Pros. So we do everything from aerial photography and GIS work, interior and exterior inspections, construction monitoring, traffic monitoring, natural disasters and emergency management, communications, promotional videos. We do a lot of those with our communication teams around the state, and structural and facility inspections. One of the big ways we've increased our numbers at the Ohio Department of Transportation over the last couple of years, we discovered along the way it's a lot easier to train a bridge inspector to be a remote pilot than it is to train a remote pilot to be a bridge inspector. So we decided to try to get this technology in the hands of the experts. So we are looking at across all the professions inside of ODOT who can use this. So we're training a lot of surveyors, a lot of bridge folks, a lot of traffic folks, a lot of engineers. Our communication folks are all going through the program. So this kind of happened during the pandemic where we started training in-house. So our first thing you have to do is pass remote pilot certification, the 60 question on the FAA exam, the Part 107. So luckily, here at ODOT, we have a program that's free, and they've done a fantastic job on that. So thank you for doing that to that team. So once you get your Part 107, you usually come to the UAS Center. It's 2 days of training. Try to get proficient on the aircraft. It's 3 hours of minimum training on a US platform to get qualified on the Phantom 4. Sometimes it's longer than that, but after that, we issue an aircraft to the the student, if you will, a student pilot, and they're required to get 10 hours of solo time where they're going through our risk management procedures, our risk assessments, our flight planning and Skyward. So we're basically training them to be kind of mini pilots and looking at airspace and how to get LANC approvals and all that type of stuff. Then the last thing you do is you kind of go out to UAS Center staffer and kind of get a check ride, if you will. And just to recap, we've got 4 bridge inspectors now, 5 surveyors, 1 engineer, 2 out of communications, 1 out of construction, 1 out of CAD mapping. So we've got 14 folks in the districts, and that number's starting to climb. And we got 4 UAS Center folks that are out there flying on a regular basis. So that's 18 folks at ODOT we have out there flying on a regular basis. So one of our biggest things that we look at is traffic monitoring. So here's some press we got a couple years ago. A recent drone survey by the Department of Transportation's Unmanned Aerial Systems Center led to traffic signal changes done by the city of Brooklyn in an effort to mitigate frequent traffic log jams in the area, especially around peak times. So that's basically what we're doing. The next slide here kind of shows you here. If you're going to get that bird's eye view of an aerial view of what really is going on in the intersection and what is going on with traffic signals. So here you go. You can kind of see 3 points at once. You can look at the traffic buildup and you can look at the signals to kind of see where the signal timing is going. So this tool is an excellent opportunity for traffic engineers to get a look where they wouldn't be able to get a look before. So we do traffic all over the state, and I always say if it looks like a spaghetti bowl, we're out there taking a look at it. So we look at a lot of high traffic areas, and obviously around school times and rush hour, it can be really congested. So we look at ways where we can make traffic a little smoother through these spaghetti bowl type of areas. Another one here is lane shift and lane closures. You know, the quickest way to cause some traffic problems on the roads is to close a lane. And that's what happens a lot for a variety of reasons. So traffic engineer will call us up, hey, we got a lane shift going on up here. Can you look at kind of where, you know, it might come to a bottleneck and see how we might be able to change the traffic pattern or whatnot. Another area we call that to is a lot of school zones. This one's in Springboro, Ohio. There's 5 schools all within a half a mile of each other, and it's a 2-lane road. So we with the University of Cincinnati and the research project had 6 drones up at once looking at all these congestion areas. And the result of that was changing the timing on the lights. It make traffic flow a little smoother, and we also positioned some law enforcement at some critical areas where they can wave and stop and wave folks through. So that really, we're able to really figure out what was going on by using this technology. Special events, we get a lot of rather class around the year, like Black Friday. This is down at the outlet malls in Monroe, Ohio. So what really happens here we get concerned about is when traffic starts to build up on the freeways. So everyone's trying to get to this gigantic outlet mall, starts backing up traffic on the highway. That's a big issue for us. So we get called out to the areas like that to look at the traffic. Another special event is the state fair. So not only are we looking at traffic building up on the freeway here, we're also looking at parking and looking at ways we can move traffic better inside the park area and park them a little quicker so we can alleviate some of that traffic that builds up on the highway. Smart roads, looking at ways we can increase traffic flow. And we took a look at the drone using before and after in this particular case here. New traffics, arc cuts are new to Ohio. They've been around in places like Indiana for a while. So we're putting these all across the state. And it's a way that semis can cut across 2-lane traffics without taking an initial left over the traffic. They can take a right, then another quick left instead of going over all the lanes of traffic. So we look at a lot of these are going across the state all over the place. Emergency shutdowns. I don't know if you folks maybe in Southern Ohio, this was in 2020, a tanker had some hazardous material and it melted into some critical areas on the bridge, a jackknife, and we had to not only assess what was going on with the damage there, we were also helping reroute traffic around the city and using a drone to look at that. Another area that we've been using a lot of drones technology with is this smart milestone box. This milestone box feeds into our traffic management system at ODOT. So if you've ever seen the pole cameras, you've seen how we can link into this. So we can go anywhere in the state and put a drone up, and this can feed right into our traffic management center. So this can feed in the Ohio National Guard, Ohio EMA, and the governor's office. We've tested all that. So if there's any major incidents, we can dispatch a team out there and look at an incident and pipe it to these decision makers in Columbus. We look at a lot of natural disasters, a lot of landslides, a lot of tornado work. We teamed up with the Ohio National Guard in 2019 during the big storms that came through Dayton. So we surveyed 28 different spots in one day. Here's a look at overhead view of a drone. You really can get a first-hand look at the devastation by using this. Display for just a second here, for those who might be interested. Flooding is another big one. Grand Lake St. Mary's tends to flood every year, almost every year. So we take a look at that. There's only 2 ways in and out of Salina. and they're looking to possibly build a third way when the flooding happens. So also look at a lot of flooding down in southeast Ohio, so we get called out there a lot. Another result of a lot of rain is landslides. So I actually got a call this morning about going out and looking at some landslides in District 11 by the Ohio River. So we actually caught one slipping here. This was District 11 as well. So we get a lot of calls to come look at landslides. Here's another one in District 8 and down in Warren County. So we're always getting calls for this type of project. Another area we're looking at landslides. We're using thermal technology to detect them a little easier. On this one slide here at the top, we had an area that slipped, an area next to it. The folks in the district didn't even know it was there, but we were able to kind of see it, different temperatures, saying, hey, we got another spot, about 800 yards to the right of it. Another way we're detecting them is looking at water seeping out, groundwater seeping out in a particular area. So we know this is a troubled spot down here at the bottom. You see the different temperatures, that's water coming out that's warmer than the groundwater. So we're able to let the engineer know, hey, you got a problem over here as well. Another one that we use a lot for, probably our biggest return on investment, is in bridge inspection. So we still use snoopers, but those are always scheduled about a year out in advance, and they're always moving. So if we need a non-critical fracture area to look at, we use a drone. It's a fast, cheap way to do it. So we look at everything from scour assessment, foot detailing, cracking, and delamination. Here's another use for it. There's a cap on top of this big bridge pier here that's hard to see. So they can go out there and take a look. Here's a filled-in crack where you can really zoom in and take a look. You can't see this any other way, either by climbing or using a drone. So it's very difficult for bridge inspectors to use to look at previously repaired places over time. So a drone can go up there and take a quick look at it. Non-redundant bridges, such as the one down in Cincinnati here, we look at these pretty frequently because they're not supported by 4 columns like some of them are. This is an older bridge, so we look at this one frequently, looking at all of the bolts and areas that might be fatigued all the time. So it's a great example. Delamination, I mentioned that before. So we're using this technology to look at surfaces of a bridge deck that may have cracks in it. Here's another example underneath. You can really see the cracking by using thermal cameras and the different areas on the bridge here. Here's another example that's gain some traction, salt barns. When we have heavy winters, it wasn't too bad this year. We had a couple weeks, but we're always trying to fill our salt barns after the winter. So we're going into the salt barn calculations here. So we're able to fly a drone, see how much salt's in there by using the square footage of the building, calculate how much salt is left in that barn. Here's another use I mentioned before. We shared service through other state agencies. This is using a magnetometer with our M600. So in the 20th century, all the farmers were trying to strike it rich by looking for oil in their fields. So there's a lot of uncapped wellheads across the state, and they're environmental hazards. They leak in the streams, and we had a couple of them, I think 2018, that actually exploded. So ODNR is trying to identify some of these hazard ones across the state, and they're using drone technology, and it's working better than anyone ever thought it would. So we're happy to share that. A lot of construction monitoring is what we get called out for as well at ODOT. A lot of times the engineer, the project manager wants to know how progress is going, how the vendors are doing. Are they as far along as they say they are? So we'll get called out various times a year to take a look at the same project. New bridge constructions, we're always building a bridge or resurfacing a bridge or doing something. So we're always getting called out to looking at the construction of a bridge, not only inspecting the bridge, but the construction of bridges as well. Resurfacing, our survey department is starting to use this to look at pavement and repaving. So here's a point cloud of a bunch of images stick together. I think it's over 5 miles. It's a really long one. So this is down in District 8. They are getting ready to resurface a road at the beginning there, and you can see how they've already are midway through the project here. So we have the ability of stitching a bunch of images together and looking at big paving projects. Another one that we shared service, we worked with Ohio Department of Public Safety, accident reconstruction. The one on the bottom left was a test run we did. The upper left one is an actual Ohio Department of Public Safety using drones for accident documentation and reconstruction. Orthomosaic type of work. This was the city of Dayton. They asked us to come and look at an area. What you see here is an area where youngsters were drag racing in a particular area here. So they wanted to put in some speed bumps to mitigate drag racing. So they wanted to look at the whole area where they were doing it. So we gave them this information, did whatever they wanted to do with it, but they requested it. The Department of Agriculture, they're in charge of roller coasters inspections. So we did this early on, looking at Zambezi Bay and Columbus and Cedar Point up in Sandusky. So it's just a large structure with connection joints and bolts and nuts and previous repairs. So it's a lot easier to send a US to take a look at it than to have someone go climb it or just stare at it from the ground. Attorney General's office, occasionally they acquire new property. So this is up in Toledo. They're trying to strike a deal with the local owner of this land to put a new on and off ramp. So they'll call us to take a look at a particular property so they can document it. Again, this is using a bunch of photos and stitching them together. Ohio EPA, so it's another rubble pile. So this was the ARCO site in Cleveland, which there were a bunch of defunct houses that were being recycled, and they basically dumped it in the neighborhood. That business went out of business and left this big rubble pile for the state of Ohio to clean up. So we did some calculating on volume to see how much it's going to cost the state to remove this. We have a partnership with Ohio National Guard, so we regularly train with them on some of their training missions. So this is at the Ohio Fire Academy. This was a Vigilant Guard exercise last year. So we have the ability to use both thermal and electrical optical to help them and assist them when they need us to, which we did during the tornadoes. I think I already had this one, more construction process. These are duplicates, so I have to apologize for that. Just real quickly, a few policies and procedures. The Unmanned Aircraft Operations and Data Usage Guidance, operating within ODOT right-of-way, kind of privacy policy, and talk a little bit about our safety management systems and flight planning and risk assessment. So at the Ohio Department of Transportation, the UAS Center is the sole department responsible for conducting unmanned aircraft systems. So we are the sole provider for that and assist other districts. We've had some instances where folks were kind of using private drones without license. So we kind of police isn't the right word to use, but we kind of manage that process for the Ohio Department of Transportation, make sure everyone's following federal guidelines and any state guidelines that might be in place. We have a third party, third party at ODOT within the right of way. So if there's any contractors on here looking to do the LTAP program and want to start flying projects for ODOT, we do have a process if you're flying over ODOT construction projects. Just want to make sure you're using a aircraft within the proper limits, and you have your license, and you're using some sort of risk management, although not required, but you're using proper guidance to facilitate a project. We do have a privacy policy that was put together by our chief legal office in 2017. Basically, we're following Ohio's public record laws, and we're the collectors of the data. So when we send it off to an agency, depending on who you are inside of ODOT, they destroy it within 2 weeks, whatever the guidelines is. Or if it's bridge inspectors, that stuff never goes away because we're always documenting, cracks and how our previous repairs are going. So some of it's destroyed, some of it's not. Just to touch on our flight management and risk risk assessment. So we have a pretty robust, it follows kind of close to manned aviation and how we dispatch our crews out there. So there's a scheduling process. It looks at airspace, it looks at power lines. They go through a risk assessment. There's an approval process for that. If everything looks good, they get signed off and they kind of conduct their flights. So if anyone out there is looking for standard operating procedures or flight manuals and stuff, I can send that your way as well. We have a pretty extensive one. This is a little look at our flight planning software. So it shows what crew's going out there. It has the temperature, weather. It shows the airspace, and if you're in an airspace that's not surface class C or something like that, you need a LANCE approval directly in here. So I do recommend, if you're a small business or if you're another agency or a small government, using some sort of platform similar to this. There's a lot of them out there now, so I do recommend. Makes life a lot easier. Here's a little look at a risk assessment that we do. Most of the time they're going to be low risk, but we want to know that the pilots are crossing their T's and dotting their I's before they go out and do a flight operation. Anything you can do to mitigate risk increases the probability over time of having more successful flights. That's what we try to do with this. Here's a quick look at our quick flight operations workflow. I know this is probably getting in the weeds a little too much, but flight request comes into the ODOT. We prioritize it to one of our pilots. They enter everything into our flight management software. A risk assessment is created. A risk assessment is reviewed. Flight planning and airspace approval is granted. And at that point, the flight is up to the pilot in command to do the go, no go, and execute the mission. So after everything is gone through, they execute the mission. Mission is completed. Mission is logged in our Skyward. And one of the reasons why we do use Skyward or a similar software like that is you can keep track of all the pilot hours, currency, pilot hours for just to see how they're progressing, and you're also able to see the emission, the amount of time on the aircraft. So we have an internal kind of policy when we do an annual inspection, or we kind of do like a 50-hour inspection. So we're able to track to see how many hours are on the aircraft. So we're doing our due diligence and maintaining the aircraft appropriately. So that's all that I have here. If anyone has any questions, I'll be on here to answer it. And here's my email address as well, david.gallagher@dot.ohio.gov. If you have any documents you would like me to share, I'm happy to do so. So I'll turn it back over to the moderator at this point.
Thanks, David. I'm going to go ahead and make Todd our next presenter, but I did want to mention that you did receive some questions during your presentation, so I sent them to you in the question box if you want to start looking them over. So Todd, you're up next. Hopefully
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well today. My presentation is not near as detailed as what you've just seen. Mine is more along the lines of just kind of how we created the program and what we've done with it. So let's get started. We actually started our program in the winter of 2017. That's when we started kind of coming up with procedures, policies, checklists, operations manuals, and the such. We worked with Fred Judson of the Ohio UAS Center, who was an incredible amount of help to us in providing both examples and just conversation regarding what has worked best for ODOT, and then we kind of morph that into what would work best for us. Some of the items that we created through these conversations were flight logs, just basically a spreadsheet that is filled out by each remote pilot at the time of the flight, showing what airframe we flew, what the flight was for, mission type, things of this nature, so we could kind of keep track of the conditions at the time and the location, pertinent information like that. We also keep a aircraft flight log. Shows what flight of the day, time, starting and ending, just different items, lat launch, where it occurred, who the pilot in command was, if there was a visual observer or any of that information. So these are also filled out prior to and then also during the flight. Inspection logs. So inspection is critical, making sure that the aircraft is in fact airworthy and is not going to just drop out of the sky solicited. So in this particular case, we have an EB fixed wing that we had used, and each time you would assemble it, you would check and inspect the different servos and parts, and just if you noticed anything pre-flight or post-flight, you could circle it right on there and then make notes about it, so that you could follow up on either providing that back to the manufacturer for official repair, or if it's something minor that you can repair in-house. When we originally started our program, we purchased two different drones. We purchased a SenseFly EB, which is the fixed wing. We purchased this because of the ability for it to stay airborne much longer. So you could do much longer missions between battery charges. The second one that we purchased was the Aubrey. This quad rotor we purchased because of several capabilities that it brought to the table, able to vertical takeoff and land. The optics on it would rotate 180 degrees. So this brought a whole nother capability that we could then use. Some of the positives and negatives of the original equipment. One, they were very expensive to get into back at this point in time. Back in 2017, you did not have a lot of different manufacturers. DJI hadn't really come in hard at that point, so it was pretty cost prohibitive to get into this. With the fixed wing, one of the biggest negatives that we found was just the large. You needed very large unobstructed landing zones to be able to land it safely. This aircraft we had multiple problems with on just trying to get it to land safely, and there are different things that you can do with it to get it to land in tighter corridors, but we just found that it was very difficult unless you had very large open sites. That particular SenseFly, both the fixed wing as well as the quad rotor, you can fly through a software provided by SenseFly called eMotion. The EB fixed wing is 100% outside of the launch. It is 100% flown through the computer. You are not hand flying it at all. It is fantastic at mapping missions where you're doing large areas and taking a lot of imaging. However, you cannot rotate the camera. That camera looks straight down only. But with the flight time, you could cover large areas, as I have mentioned before. The quad rotor, what's nice about that, obviously, is vertical takeoff and landing. It's highly maneuverable, very easy to hand fly, as well as to run in its computer-controlled missions. This particular one has an incredible camera on it. I believe it was a 38 megapixel camera, which right now in the industry, 20 megapixels seems to be about the standard for most mapping drones. So it was a very significant leap in just terms of camera that you had. The problem that we had with the Aubrey that really kind of minimized its usefulness was the flight times. From the time you powered on and then start the connection process and uploading the flight plan and go through your pre-flight checklists until you land is very short. It starts consuming battery immediately. But again, it brought vertical takeoff and a high megapixel camera to the equation for us. We have since moved over to the DJI Phantom 4 Pro V2, which seems to be the gold standard right now for most people that are doing mapping missions per se. We've also employed the Parrot Anaphy, which this drone's nice because you are able to rotate the optics on it, and we use this more for progress photography as opposed to mapping missions. It's easy to set up. I mean, it comes in about a lunchbox size kit that contains everything, and then you can just use your iPhone or Android phone as your screen. The software that we utilize for our maps or for mapping missions is Maps Made Easy. It is an autonomous control where you can take control over manually at any point in time, and it enables you to plan exactly what you want for accuracies and speed and things of that nature. So it's a very user-friendly architecture. Pix4D Mapper is the software that we use, which is predominantly used within the industry, if I had to say, for stitching all those images together. And then you can add ground control information and check shots into that to generate a three-dimensional point cloud. From that point cloud, we then take it out into Carlson Precision 3D, which is used for point cloud reduction, and then we can generate surfaces, DTMs, tins, things of that nature that can then be used for calculations or contouring or a myriad of other items. Carlson Civil is our primary software that we use for volumetric calculations within the AutoCAD environment. So with respect to mapping missions and surface generation, we use it primarily for volume calculations, volumes moved to date, volumes remaining. So this is one example of just a calculation within AutoCAD that we're able to do as a progress calculation, just so you can use it to help generate your pay requests or document pay requests, things of that nature. Another nice thing with surface generation is not just the volume calculations, but you're creating a geo-referenced photo mosaic that you can then bring into AutoCAD directly under any line work showing the areas of calculations or cut fill stake values, things of that nature. So it just gives a really good depiction of the site at that point in time, overlain with any kind of volumetric calculation information you wish to project onto it. We use it for a lot of our private sites where we're documenting the existing conditions of the site prior to, or as we take control of the site prior to the beginning of construction. Just gives you some imaging that you're able to take to just kind of show exactly how it was the day you took control of the site. We've used it for milestone documentation, as in this picture where we were setting beams on the Vrooman Road project over the Chagrin River. You're just able to see kind of how it looked at that point in time on that day. It's pretty interesting imaging that you can do with them. And again, this is the same scenario where you're just documenting the status of the bridge as it progresses on specific days. So it really enables you to kind of keep a clear catalog of time on a project. This was a Norfolk Southern project that we were doing where we were building a new bridge adjacent to an existing structure. And again, we use it just for documentation of progress. And what you're looking at here is a large site that we had as part of a oil and gas project. This particular site had about 600 vertical feet from the bottom of the hill to the top, and it was about 86 acres. What you're looking at is the actual point cloud of the information generated from the flights being stitched together. And I can get it, there we go. What's nice about this is you can use this to show owners that aren't either on site all the time or others within your organization the progress of the site, so they can kind of get a better handle on the conditions that are being dealt with, environmental factors. You can see, like in this case, all of our SWIP is up, so you can go through and point out that, hey, all our SWIP has been completed as of this date, and here's a visual representation of it. What's been cleared, you can see any area that has been mowed or prepped for the start of earthwork operations. This is that same project 4 months later, I believe. So now you can see same thing. You can see some of the progress that's been made. With this, the nice thing about it being a point cloud is you can save your flight exactly as how you can dictate the flight. So you can have it follow an access road, which we did in this case, just kind of to give it some visual appeal. But what's nice about it is now you can see that some of your slope protection's in. You can see that you've started stoning your access road. You have started seeding and applying your erosion control blankets, things of that nature. You can see where stockpiles have been developed and constructed. And now you can see also the shape of the pad. You can see that, the project, you can kind of see the progress as it's materialized over time, as well as you can start seeing growth for stabilized slopes. That's one thing that is very big as it relates to completion of contract, is you have to have a percentage of growth established before the owner takes over maintenance of those slopes. So by doing flights like this and generating the photo mosaics, you can really see how that develops. And this was when we walk off of a project, the last thing that we do in this case, if possible, is to do another flight so that we can say, hey, we pulled off the project on this day. This is how it sat. These are, and it makes it very easy for us to go back and say, yes, this issue was ours, or hey, this developed after we left. It's not our responsibility to repair it, or gives you at least a hand to discuss. So as you can see here, the access road's done. Vegetation is coming through very nicely. The pad's been stoned. There's another contractor on site already starting the foundations for this work. So it's nice that you're able to develop these. I think these little 1-minute videos are able to really give a lot of information about the site on that day, how it sat. So for people in your organization that are unable to get down to the site on a regular basis, it just gives them kind of a much better visual than just a couple static pictures. One of the other uses that we found, at least in our scenario, is seeding and mulching. Seeding and mulching is typically paid as a square yard item, and it is forever a battle that we have to fight with subcontractors. They want to go out and just take a quick measurement, or if they see an acreage on the site of 85 acres, they just say, okay, well, it's 85 acres that we're seeding. What they fail to realize is you're deducting out for stone access roads, pads, rock channel protection, all those different items. So what we were able to do to really control our costs and make sure that we weren't overpaying or paying for things that were sprayed twice, not at our direction, we would overfly the site, create these photo mosaics, and then in those photo mosaics, we can create different areas. You'll see like different areas outlined, and then we can create a table that gives the name of the area, it gives the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional sloped air, square footage, and the date that it was completed on. So it makes it very nice for reconciling subcontractor quantities. Generally speaking, when you present this to your sub, it ends pretty much most of the conversations or discussions regarding how they're either being shorted or whatever the case may be. Marketing is obviously another thing, another nice item. So we've been very fortunate in that we've been able to be part of several projects where we have won different awards. And the nice thing about being able to take imaging is that you can submit that as part of your package, to these different organizations that provide the awards. So we found that to be a nice thing. A picture is a high quality picture is definitely something that enables your marketing department to just kind of really show some of your capabilities and what you're able to do as an organization. So that was pretty much the gist of mine. I didn't want to get down in the weeds too much about the different FAA requirements, and I think our previous presenters have done a very, very good job about that. If you have any questions or anything like that, you can feel free to contact me. Here's my information, and hope I was able to shed some light on it.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you to everyone who's presented so far today. It's really been appreciated. I have been sending questions that came in the question box to our presenters. So while I give you an overview of how to actually sign up for and take the training, I'm sure they'll be looking at your questions there. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And hopefully you're seeing the LTAP webpage on there. And we are a part of the Ohio Department of Transportation. This is Victoria Beal, and I work with the LTAP team to be able to deliver our program. We're very pleased that we were able to partner with Micah Flanagan and the supportive services area with the OJT funding to get these resources developed for you. So as a follow-up to this webinar, I will send you a link to our webpage. And what you can do once you get here, if you're interested in signing up for the UAS training, is you'll want to scroll down and you'll see on the site that there's a card that says e-learning. So you'll just need to click on that card and it'll take you to the page where we actually have our e-learning all available. And we have a number of different ways that you can get to the e-learning. But before you navigate there, one thing that's important is to make sure you have a username and password in order to be able to access the e-learning modules. So if you look farther down, you'll see that there's an area here that says My ODOT, and it says a My ODOT account is required to access the e-learning system. So you would click there to get started. And it actually gives you an overview, step by step, of what to do to get that My ODOT account. Now, I thought it would be better if I just had the page up for you, and I'm going to go ahead and share that. I have a different tab open right now. So hopefully that has refreshed on your screen. And what you want to do is you want to request an account, which is the second option here on the My ODOT page. And you want a basic account. Don't worry about any of the other ones above. Go right down here to click here to request a basic account. And then from the drop-down box that's going to appear, you want to pick the LTAP e-learning. And then you can click the next button once you've done that. Now, I will tell you that we do ask that you fill out more than just the red starred boxes here. So please make sure you fill out your company name, address, all of those details. And when you have that completed, obviously you'll click the I'm not a robot button, and then you'll be able to submit that information in order to send your request in. Once your request is received, we actually approve those as they come in. So if you send your request in at midnight, we will actually be approving it on the next business day, but we will get your account approved. And when you get the account approval back, one of the things that you need to realize, and I think a lot of folks don't, is that, through this process, they will send you an email and you actually have to go in and activate your account when you get the email. So make certain once you receive the email back from the My ODOT system that you have activated your account. If you don't do that within 30 days of receiving that email, it will actually just wipe your request out of the system and you'll have to go in and re-request it. So make sure that you do that. Once you have your My ODOT account, you can then navigate over to the e-learning system. And let me take you back real quick here a second. I'm going to take you back to our e-learning page. And I want to show you once you're here, once you have your My ODOT account, it's just the green button on the right-hand side. It says Launch, Access the e-learning system here. You would click that button and it will actually open up a page with the e-learning system in it. And I'm going to use my alias today to show you what the student view looks like. So you would enter in your username, your password, and you hit go. And what will happen then when the system opens up is it usually defaults over to the My Courses tab. So if it does that for you the first time that you log in, you're not going to have nearly, what I've got here on my screen because I've used this account for a while. You'll probably have a very empty page. So what you want to do is actually click on Course Catalog, because you need to select the courses and add them to your My Courses list in order to begin taking them. So once you click on Course Catalog, I find the easiest way to locate these courses, since there are so many courses that we have are available in our e-learning system, is to go to the box that says Title and just type in UAS, and then I hit Enter. And what it does is it shrinks the number that are showing on the screen down to just the courses that we have available, the awareness module, and then the modules that you would take in order to prepare or begin preparing for the remote pilot certification licensing exam. So I'll go ahead and register for this first UAS course. I'll click on Enroll, and it asks me if I want to truly enroll in that. I'll tell it yes. And it says I've been successfully enrolled, and it tells me, now to go ahead. It has been added to the My Courses tab, and to get to the course, to click My Courses. So I'll tell it okay. And I come back here to the top of the page and go back to the other tab from My Courses. And since I have so many of them in here, I'm going to need to look for it. But you can just scroll down until you find the course that you're looking for. And in this case, it's right here towards the bottom, UAS Awareness course, that I added it today, and I haven't attempted it yet. So I'll go ahead and click on this button at the very front of the line, and that's how you actually launch the course. So it's launched the course out for me, and I can expand my window out to make it larger so I can see everything. Because of course we all have different settings on our computers. I like to have mine a little bit larger. And I don't have the audio running, but there is some audio currently playing on the course, and when it's done, it would activate that next button for me. So that's a quick and easy tutorial on how to get into the courses, and we hope that you definitely take advantage of them. Again, there's no cost for these courses, or really for any of the courses that are available through LTAP. I'm going to take you back to our e-learning page real quickly and just show you that below that green button, there is a link you can click if you want to see all the courses that are offered through LTAP. And we have a number of courses, as you saw, and we have them in a ton of areas. I know today's webinar focus is specifically on UAS, so I won't go into all of those. But that concludes my demo. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, and then I want to go ahead and ask our presenters if they could please start unmuting themselves, and let's go ahead and have a conversation around the questions that have come in. So is there anybody who would like to go first from the questions I've sent you?
I can answer the first one. I know it was from right after my presentation. This is Josh. The question was, do you need a quality drone and or camera? So it's really dependent upon what you're trying to achieve. Is going to kind of drive what kind of drone you need and what kind of quality of camera that you need. But I can tell you that, BWC and what we're not using anything super expensive. We're not using $20,000 drones. We're using stuff that you could, go on Amazon and buy. Mostly DJI stuff. It's kind of hard to beat. So the stuff that we're using is probably in the price range of around $1,500. The Parrot Anafi, I think somebody mentioned that earlier. The Parrot, that's a great unit. You can get it for around $600 or $700, I think. That's the drone I have, is my personal drone, and it does a lot of great things. A zoom camera, and the camera you can tilt all the way up, and super small and light. Doesn't you don't get a lot of attention with it as opposed to a big massive drone. So I think those are kind of those price ranges that you're getting into. I don't really have much experience with anything cheaper than that $600 or $700 range. Once you start getting below that, you might have a little more difficulty. But yeah, there's definitely You don't have to. It doesn't have to be totally price prohibitive. So that's kind of what I got with that one. I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts.
They actually didn't see the question that I sent to you. So if you want to read it off to them, and then maybe David and Todd could chime in.
Yeah, it was just, do you need a quality drone and or a camera was the question. So.
Yeah, it depends what you're trying to do. Imaging is one thing. The Anafi is very good for imaging, but due to the shutter that it has on or the way that it takes pictures through its shutter, it tends to have some issues on the mapping side. We found that the DJI has probably the biggest bang for the buck on optics as far as for mapping accuracy. But that's just more or less what we've kind of tested out through trial and error.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. When we're doing mapping, if we're building a model or something like that, I think you mentioned that earlier, that the Phantom for V2 is by far, that's probably easily the best bang for your buck because of the camera, and kind of hard to beat that.
Okay, so are there any other questions anyone would like to go ahead and address now? I know I've sent quite a few over to you guys, but you've also been working hard at responding to them in the answer box. David, is there any questions? I know I've sent you quite a few.
Yeah, one of the questions was like, does Ohio have any requirements, or ODOT have any ban on like Chinese equipment? And the question is, or the answer to that, I guess, is kind of tricky. The short answer is no. But we are trying to phase out of the Chinese aircraft just for security purposes. I know we do some work with the Ohio National Guard. We're not flying any of that stuff over those facilities, and we fly over some critical infrastructure, so we're kind of sensitive to that. So we're in the process of switching over. One of the issues, I think Josh kind of laid it out, in the DJI product is it's hard to beat for the price point. And we at the, we're government. We got a bidding process. It's pretty defined process how we procure aircraft. So a lot of the cheapest one that can do what we need to do are the Chinese one, unfortunately. But the good news is that America made in USA products are starting to catch up. So we look forward to purchasing those. Our last two purchases were all made in the USA products, so we are moving towards that.
Yeah,
Great,
just to kind of piggyback off that, we've just been starting to make some other purchases, and we've kind of started looking at Autel, which is a U.S. company. I mean, they're using Chinese parts, but they're putting everything together in the U.S. at least. So we've looked at Autel, and we should be getting one to test out soon. So that's an option. It's very similar to the DJI stuff, but yeah, it's really hard to find anything that's exactly the same quality as DJI is putting out, but there are a few options.
Great, thank you. And I know there was a more technical question, I believe, that came in for Todd about how the elevation was established in the photo mapping. Todd, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we found, we are a structural concrete contractor by probably majority, bridges, water treatment plants, things of that nature. So for us, accuracy is highly sought after. So we really spent a lot of time and effort and calories really vetting out what we thought, how we thought things could be brought down to their best accuracy. What we found was that depending on the project that you're flying, so as an example, the video that I had shown of that site where there was 600 vertical feet of grade change, at that point in time, what we found is it is probably best to go with more ground control than not. So we were using GPS RTK based equipment to build that project, also for layout. we would run a conventional closed loop traverse using conventional robotic tow stations, and then a Denny, Trimble Denny for the level loop. Once we have those established, then we would go through and throw out random, basically 5-gallon bucket lids throughout the site, and we would capture those either conventional or RTK. In this case, I think it was all RTK. We would capture actual northern, easting, and elevation coordinate values for each of those bucket lids. And then through the Pix4D software, you are able to import that text file, those shots, into the software and go through the imagery and pick out the center of the bucket lids. And then the software knows, okay, well, this northern, easting, and elevation is associated with this point. And then through the magic of the software, it is able to go through and pull everything down to those grades. What I recommend, though, when you go into this mission, this type of mission, you want to put out a lot of ground. I mean, if you think you have too much ground control, you don't. Put out more. It's all, the flight itself is very quick. You're looking at 20 to 40 minutes for that entire site. So 2 batteries, you're done. It's the setup that takes the longest. You want to make sure you have control smattered throughout the middle, along the perimeters, at any steep face slopes, a toe and a top maybe, so that now the software can kind of see that. The more you put out, the better the end product's going to be. We have now kind of realized that we're pretty confident that we can see consistently plus or minus a 1/10 vertical accuracies throughout that, and if you consider how much time it would have taken to hand topo the site to get a similar accuracy using RTK, it's a game changer for us. I hope I answered your question.
If they have any follow-up to that, I'm sure they'll put it in the question box. Thank you. So we've had some general questions come in about the training, and I just want to make sure that everyone who's on the webinar realizes that the modules are not intended to give you a certification. The modules are intended for you to use to study for the drone pilot licensing exam. That is what you need to take in order to get that license. It's kind of like the driver's ed courses that kids complete before they go take their driving test to get their license to drive the car. So ODOT's not issuing any type of certification. We're just offering this as a resource. So, those who are interested in, becoming licensed, commercial drone pilot operators will be able to have a resource that they can go to get information. So there are some other questions in here about how folks would find work, doing work for others, and we will have our outreach coordinators put together some additional information for you on that area about once you were to get the drone pilot license, how would you look at using it? Because I know that they've worked really hard throughout this whole process to get that information put together. So are there any other questions that our presenters saw in the question box that they'd like to address right now?
I just had a couple questions from Robert sent a few questions in, and he was asking about what are the different FAA parts that govern UAS, and he mentioned Part 135, which is more towards package delivery, and Part 137, which would be more for spraying, kind of like the drones that I showed where they were doing precision agriculture and spraying. Personally, I'm not aware of all the those different things because that's not what I do. If you're finding that you are needing to do something that's outside of what Part 107 regulates, then you need to contact the FAA, and they can direct you towards how you could do that. So if it's heavy lift things that's beyond the weight ranges in Part 107, or if it's spraying and things that are prohibited through Part 107, then obviously you either need to reach out to them and try to figure out how you can accomplish that and abide by federal regulations.
Yeah, I had one more question. A few folks were asking me about what kind of American-made aircraft we use. We use the SkyDIO2. It's a good one for bridge inspection, and our communications folks use it as well. If you fly underneath a bridge, like a lot of the Chinese or GPS ones will lose GPS signal, and it's like a ice. It's like a puck on ice. It just kind of like floats around underneath a bridge. But the SkyDIO2 has excellent navigation equipment, so you can get underneath a bridge. Don't need to worry about a GPS signal, and it will self-avoid hitting piers and decks and whatever you need to do. So that would be my recommendation for a UAS company, made in USA. Another question was the state of Ohio thinking about putting some sort of certification program or license program like other states have? Currently, no. The federal government, FAA, has jurisdiction over the national airspace system, so whatever we put wouldn't really hold up as far as federal level when it comes to talking about how we're flying aircraft national airspace system. So currently, we're not talking about having any certification process at the state level.
Great, and we do still have a few minutes left, so what other questions that have come into the question box would our presenters like to address? I hear somebody typing, so they must be answering a question. I know that we've gotten a lot.
I think I just have one more as I'm looking through here. Someone asked if they take the test and don't get the 70% on the score, how long does someone have to wait to retake the test? I was going to say it was 14 days, but now that I think that, I might have to actually look that one up. So you can shoot me an email and maybe we'll try to figure that one out, or I'll find it here before we end.
Yeah, we will be giving a downloadable spreadsheet to all of our presenters of all the questions that came in today. So they'll be able to reach out to you directly if we didn't get you a response. And I have a question for the presenters. Have you been made aware of any changes in the Part 107 regulations as far as being able to fly over individuals? I thought I'd heard that something was coming in that area.
Yes, as of December 31st, they have new regulations regarding recurrency, flight over persons, I believe package deliveries coming into that. But as of the last couple weeks, I have been unable to find that they have been actually written into the Federal Register, and until that happens, they have not taken effect.
Yeah, and to add to that, I know there's some individual companies such as the EBX, they're working with the FAA. The type certification basically go through the FAA process, allows them to have reassurance that there's aircraft can fly over people, some of them requiring parachutes, other weight limits and whatnot. So there's a process for companies to start working with the FAA to get a special type certification for when they're allowed to fly over people.
Great, thank you for that information. And for anybody who is interested, we'll make sure on our follow-up email that we send you out information on how you can get the Federal Register delivered to you every day in your email inbox if you're interested. I find that, especially being in government, it's a great way to keep up on all the changes that are happening. So I think with that, we have pretty well come to the end of our time together. I want to thank all of our presenters. It was great information. I always learn so much when I hear any one of you speak about this topic. So also I want to thank Micah for all of her partnership in getting the funding and getting this program off the ground, literally. So we could make sure that this training resource is available for everyone who's interested out there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and a great evening. Take care.